Hello and welcome to ET Auto Startup Adda, a station for innovation. As the industry transitions or transforms, we see a lot of scope of and opportunity for creating a new business emerges. When Maruti Suzuki started or India started car manufacturing, we saw several auto component makers and other companies came into being, and they are now global leaders in their respective fields. Similarly, as you see now, the mobility or automobile industry is at the cusp of transition and transformation, where technology is the key driver, or you can say the central part of the entire transformation. One of the biggest aspects of any business is customer satisfaction and profitability. When we talk about automobile servicing or car servicing, as a car owner, we always find it a very annoying experience when we send out our car for services, but we find at the end that either one or two small problem has remained to be there, it has not been fixed out, or newest minor, it could be minor or major problem has cropped up. In such a scenario, the workshop has to involve their manpower in the same work that they did already. They have to call back the vehicle and try to fix it. At the same time, it doesn't give a great, happy experience for the customer. To solve this, there's a Bangalore based startup that is trying to use technology, artificial intelligence, or visual inspection to weed out this problem. Let's understand from him or from them rather, how are they trying to do this? How much of really they are able to resolve? So let me introduce today's startup at the Startup Adda, a station for innovation. The startup name is CamCom, and I'm joined by all the three co-founders of the company, Mr. Ajith Nayar, co-founder and CMO CamCom. We also have Mr. Mahesh Subramanian. He is the co-founder and CEO CamCom. We are also joined by Mr. Umesh, co-founder and COO of the company. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining ET Auto Startup Adda.
Thank you very much,
Before we
Nabil.
start
Pleasure.
the question and answer, obviously, like every episode, today we have a very special expert, or I can say the person who is going to evaluate is Mr. Shashank Srivastava. He is the Senior Executive Director at India's largest car company, Maruti Suzuki India Limited. He will put his evaluation and his view on the company. But before we get into the discussion, I would right away invite the co founders to give their presentation and make us understand what is there they are trying to do and how are they trying to achieve that accuracy and how are they trying to solve this one of the major problems. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Nabil. Much appreciated. It's a pleasure to be on the show and, of course, to have industry doing like Shashank Srivastava as a part of this is in many ways, I'm sure, going to be a major learning experience for us. Allow me to quickly share my screen. As you rightly said in your introduction, the whole range of visual inspections is what we are all about. And the reason why we got into visual inspections is because defect and damage inspections are fairly subjective. And we think it is important to have technology incorporated into that inspection process to make it objective and, of course, with the intention of future proofing that particular quality assurance process. Uh, we, as CamCom, we are a made in India company for the world, and we obviously work with the likes of Startup India, Agni, ASSOCHAM. We are winners of the ASSOCHAM award as well, and we have a CamCom Vision Lab in our offices here in Bangalore, where we work on cutting edge and bleeding edge technologies specifically associated with computer vision. Why do we think it is very important? Well, the whole concept of quality, in many ways, countries like Germany, Japan, South Korea, Israel are synonymous with quality, and unfortunately, that is not the case with India. We think it is important to bring in a more visual audit trail based quality inspection process, which can essentially cover the statistical quality control techniques that are currently being used across the life cycle of the automotive industry, because of which we operate across the spectrum, right from components to the used car. So in many ways, right from cradle to grave or end of line to end of life, as one of our customers in the space said. What do we do? In the case of component manufacturers, we focus on micro level defects. These are typically defects up to 50 microns, where we provide rigs which sit on top of their existing conveyor belts and essentially identify various defects which are typically not caught by the human eye. We use a mixture of deflectometry and CV to enable these inspections. And these essentially match the throughput requirements of the component manufacturer as well. In the case of OEMs, we work in both the two-wheeler and the four-wheeler industry. We essentially offer a range of inspection services as the components are being affixed to the chassis to make sure that all the components are defect-free. Once the components are affixed, underbody inspections using UV to ensure that there are no leakages, etc. And of course, at the end of line, to ensure that the product that is being shipped out into the market is 100% defect-free. Here also, the focus is on custom, bespoke retrofit rigs that essentially provide these services. It has a very small footprint, and it essentially does not in any way disrupt the existing manufacturing process. Of course, EV is the next big thing in India, and of course, we are absolutely ready in as far as the EV industry is concerned as well. And we are in talks with multiple companies to essentially incorporate our technologies into their assembly line. From finished vehicle logistic onwards, our solution shifts its focus from micro defect to macro damage. And here, finished vehicle logistics, as you are aware, a car manufactured in Delhi, for example, gets sold in Kerala. It follows a multimodal transport system, and at each and every roll-on, roll-off point, inspection has to happen so as to assign responsibility and liability. And our rigs are used for that. These rigs are essentially deployed in yards. They are weatherproof. They can be put under trying circumstances and still provide you with the results. As you can see on the screen, we'll be able to pick up macro level damages that essentially are part of the vehicle so that the PDI can take care of it before it essentially moves into the dealership and onto the customer. You spoke specifically about service centers, and this is a very interesting use case. From service centers onwards, our solutions actually are deployed on mobile devices. Any mobile device manufactured in 2016 has the ability to capture pictures which enable our system to identify and analyze results with regards to damage on the exterior of the car. A damage report would look something like this. So while the car is being handed over for servicing, pictures are taken or a video is taken, a detailed visual detail of the vehicle is created. You can see what we call heat maps here on the screen. The blue exterior line that you see is where the origin of the dent has happened. The darker the color, the deeper the dent. This is one of our IPs. We have the ability to do depth perception on a 2D image. This also acts as a upsell ticket for the service center technicians, because typically it's a service change of consumables, and damage on the exterior, which can be fixed as a part of the service routine, can be done through with the customer itself. We are a platform as a service, because of which the solution is nothing. It's as simple as an API call. You invoke our API, you give us the pictures, we annotate it and return it. One other major industry where our solutions have created a significant impact is in the insurance space, where using our solution both for two-wheelers and four-wheelers, we have been able to reduce the cycle time of settling a claim from 3 to 5 days to under 5 minutes. And this can actually even be done by the customer themselves. If they have a small vendor fender, they don't actually have to wait for a insurance surveyor to come. They can just take their mobile phones, click the pictures, analyze it, and thanks to IRDA saying that any claim below 50,000 rupees does not require the services of an assessor, this is probably one of the easiest ways to settle an insurance claim. And we operate across the spectrum, like I said, not just in claims, but when you want to report a first notice of loss, or when you essentially want to underwrite the asset and understand the health score of the car, also our solutions are used. So it's used in claims, it's used in pre-inspection, it's also used in break-in inspections. Car rental companies, probably the easiest of the use cases. When you check out a car, a vehicle damage report, or a VDR as it's normally called, is done, and you're expected to return the car in the same condition. If there is any other extra damage, you can be held liable and responsible for it. So, our solution is used to scan the car before it's handed to the customer, and on return, it's scanned again, and a Delta report is generated so as to assign responsibility and liability. Used cars is again a major sector for us. One of my customers said that, much like you eat food, you essentially consume a used car with your eyes first. So it's very important for the exterior of the car to be in tip-top shape. Of course, as a used car, you understand that there are going to be certain dents, dings, danks, etc. But thanks to COVID, everybody's sitting behind a desk and buying a fairly pricey asset without physical verification. So the more amount of information you provide them, the easier it is for the customer to decide as to whether to go ahead with that particular purchase or not. So there again, our solutions are used. Just to give you an idea in terms of the people that we have dealt with and are dealing with, there are a whole bunch of others as well, which obviously cannot be named for multiple reasons. But we cover the entire spectrum, as you can see here. We have been very, very lucky in terms of our journey so far. Have had the opportunity to deal with some of the biggest OEMs, right from Daimler Trucks to Mahindra to MG in India, winners of the 8th WAF Award for Best Innovation. And I would, of course, like to call out the fact that we are part of the NASCOM Average 50 cohort as well. And we have recently set up an office in Dubai. We are a team of 40 based out of Bangalore in India. And we hope to essentially take things forward as the partner when it comes to quality inspections and creating visual audit trails across the life cycle of a vehicle. This is, in short, what CamCom is all about.
For putting. Looks very exciting indeed, and it is going to provide great help to the industry across the value chain. You talked about shop floor till the after sales and insurance and all kind of aspect where you will use technology to ascertain. But it's time to call the expert from the industry who will have a better understanding, and he is dealing with all these kind of issues and subject day to day. Let me welcome Mr. Shashank Srivastava, Senior Executive Director, Maruti Suzuki, India. He will put his views, then we'll go forward in the discussion. Good
Yeah,
afternoon, Shashank sir.
thank you, Nabil. I think the idea is pretty good. We, of course, have a lot of companies now using AI for. Hear me, Nabil?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so I was saying it's a great idea, and I thought the presentation was very good. So, all congratulations to Ajith and Mahesh for putting this together. I have a couple of questions though, and because the AI based vision systems which are being used for various things, which was shown also in the presentation, basically they are giving meaning to the pixels which are captured by the vision system. So you have a vision system which captures the pixels. The pixels then are given meaning by the AI, regardless of the algorithms which are used by the vision system. So, what is the special, unique character of your solution, Ajit, Mahesh, which will make this a different or a special or a more or a better system for vehicle inspection for various reasons? What is in the AI part which you have done? Is it a proprietary thing? What exactly is it?
Yeah, so I can take this question. Good question, Shashank, and thanks for your kind comments on what we do. We are very enthused with that. To answer your question, yes, we have proprietary algorithms sitting at the back end that do the defect and damage assessments. These are developed in-house. The base is, of course, everybody works on either a TensorFlow or a PyTorch or something of that base. The neural nets are what they are, but we have specific defect algorithms that we do on top, which enable us to do to the tune of 50 microns, which is 0.05 mm defects, which things like dust in paint, for example, which are very tough to find. The second more important thing is our system is completely configurable, right? So a typical system would say yes, no, right? You could configure the system to say whether it's an A panel, B panel, or a C panel, and actually set different thresholds for what you want to measure. Okay. Third, the AI system actually can give you a go no go decision, saying whether this can be rebuffed or whether it needs to be reworked or it needs to be repainted. So the AI system is actually not just doing diagnostic AI, it's actually doing prescriptive AI at the end of the day. So those are the three main pillars on which we stand.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And yeah, of course, you explained about the proprietary algorithms. Is there something special in terms of for the application in various institutions like dealerships or in insurance companies or in parts inspection, etc.? Is there a special cloud architecture that you are sort of advocating?
Yes, for anything that's mobile
Does
based
the
today.
system get better? Do you use ML tools as well over a period of time as you increase the data?
Yes, it is a self-learning, deep learning model at the end of the day. So as we receive more data, as we receive more feedback, the system keeps learning from it, and it's on a curve of accuracy.
Yeah.
Right now, in the aftermarket space, we have one of the highest accuracy rates in the industry, falls between 90 to 92%, and it's constantly going up. On a monthly basis, we are inspecting in the aftermarket side alone, we are inspecting around 2 million images. So that gets added to the database of training. So on a monthly basis, we're adding 2 million new images, 200,000 inspections plus every month. So, and the system keeps learning from it fundamentally. So it keeps on improving with time.
Okay.
I think Shashank san, you are there? Yeah.
Understood. Understood. And is there a cloud architecture which you are prescribing, especially when you is there something a special requirement as far as edge computing is concerned?
Not necessarily. We use widely available edge computes, and we have either a cloud-based GPU or an on-prem based GPU to do the inference. So on an on-prem assembly line, latencies would be of primary importance, especially if you're doing components which require high-speed throughputs, in which case the cloud latency will not really be viable. But the base architecture is extendable, that it could be on on-prem, it could be hybrid, or it could be completely cloud-based.
Okay. So I see from the system which you have just prescribed, you talk mainly about exterior imperfections, but and metallic. I thought, is there something which you can also do a real time visibility or the traceability? You talked about diagnostics, of course, online, but what about traceability? Precision you have spoken of, and I think your system is great in that sense. What about the timing to scan 360? Is it it's in a short enough period? Do you think these are the practical problems which have been overcome already by your system, or do you think you are still working on it?
No, most of the issues have been overcome. So, for example, from an end of line inspection, we have the ability to do the complete 360 and give you the result in under 10 seconds. Okay. From a component manufacturer perspective, the
Oh, I see.
inspections take a second or two, right, for smaller components. So we always map the speed of our output to the speed of the conveyor belt, especially in a factory setup. So what that basically helps our customers is not change their workflow at all, right? So we don't want to either come in and speed up or slow down. Will both have its consequences, right? So we will always match the pitch of what you run in your factories. Umesh, you want to add something on the traceability bit?
Yeah, so when it comes to a finished vehicle, there is a traceability that is already there in terms of which particular vehicle you are inspecting in terms of VIN numbers and stuff like that. However, when you come to components, the traceability thus far was not there, and our system brings in that. So every part that is inspected is assigned a specific part number, part ID, not a part number, but a part ID. And post inspection, we actually print out the QR code, small QR codes that can be actually fixed onto the product. The good ones go through. The bad ones are traced to the refurbishment centers where people scan that and figure out what the damages and defects are there, and then do the refurbishment of it, and then passes through again through the quality inspection, automatic quality inspection, and moves on to onto the market. So that's how we build traceability at the component level. At the vehicle level, it's a VIN number that actually provides us the traceability. When it comes to aftermarket, because the the uploads of the images are happening from anywhere, right? I mean, people are doing it from any corner of this country, or for that matter, anywhere else in the world. We typically have a turnaround time of about 2 to 2.5 minutes, per inspection that is done. So while a surveyor from an insurance company is going around the car and is taking his 8 minimum images and stuff like that, and by the time he uploads it and he is finishing his other documentation, the results of our assessment are already with them. So it's almost as real time as it gets on the field. The same is true with the with the service centers. The same is true with the dealerships and used cars as well. So we have tried to map our processes in a way that it actually very seamlessly sits in the existing processes of our users. So it does not change anything for them. Okay, and all it does is it speeds up the whole process for them. Earlier, the images were uploaded, and somebody at the back end is looking at it. It takes 15, 20, 30 minutes, sometimes hours, because of the number of claims that are done or the inspections that are done. So our system basically tries to do that in under 3 minutes, in the aftermarket. When it comes to the online on the premise in the manufacturing setup, we are matching ourselves completely with the turnaround time that is required for that conveyor speed. I mean, the conveyor is working on a 3.5-4 meters per minute, and has X number of products going through it in that particular in that speed with a certain pitch. Our inspection matches that 100%. So there is nothing that is lost as latency, either from an inspection perspective or from a physical movement and automation perspective. We deeply integrate with all the conveyors, PLCs, back-end SAP, MES systems when it comes to the on-premise solution.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So am I to assume on the question of real-time visibility for operators, it will be real-time?
Yes, on the manufacturing plant is absolutely real time. I mean, you're seeing as the inspection is happening, the result is being shown there right away, with nothing stopping them. Whereas from the aftermarket, what one does is that, let's say that I am the surveyor, I'm somewhere in the Northeast, and I'm uploading my images. So there is a latency to upload images, and then after the images are received by us, and then we provide them the results. So there is a little bit of latency there, but even then it is as real time as it gets, because within 2.5 minutes we are actually giving the entire assessment, which basically talks about extent of damages on the vehicle, and also giving decisions for an insurance company saying that should you replace or repair this particular thing, because the extent of damage is such, severity
That's
is so
great.
high that you better go with replacement, because that will cost lesser than actually repairing.
That's great.
Those kinds of
That's great.
decisions
And my final question for Ajith, Mahesh is that does this system is it possible to have a variable damage detection? In other words, can you specify the level of damage that needs to be detected? It could be different for different, for a service vehicle, it could be different from an absolutely premium vehicle, or could be different from a entry level vehicle, things like that. So does the system permit that variability?
Absolutely, it does. So it can even go down to a level of thresholding that you can do and configuration, where you can say white dust on white paint is okay, black dust on white paint not okay. You can go down to that level of detail.
Great.
Also, when it comes to premium vehicles, you brought that point up. Recent pilot we did with an Australian company which deals with all high-end vehicles. We also tell them very, very small spot damages, because owners of such vehicles are worried about spot damages also. They are not necessarily worried only about the large damages. So to provide them micro damage, additional ability, which is probably not required for, let's say, most of the vehicles that are there in India, which are not of high-end nature.
That's great. So Nabil, these were the questions I had. I think they have they have made fantastic progress. So it's quite practical. I think the solutions they are offering. I have no more questions to ask, Nabil. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shashank San, for your time. And I'll take the discussion now further and understand how did the idea of this startup came in and what's the journey looks like going forward on the other aspect of the business. Thank you so much once again, Shashank San, for taking out time and joining the startup
Thank
Adda
you.
today.
Thank you. And all
Thank
the
you.
best, Ajit, Mahesh, Umesh. Great work. Hope that you have a fantastic business ahead.
Thank you,
Thank
Shashank
you very
sir.
much, Shashank
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
And Nabil, I also believe that you didn't ask me this time, but for
Yeah,
scalability and for practicality, I think they can get
and
full marks for
business.
that. No,
Oh,
normally it's at 6 or 7 that I give, but I think in this case, a 8 or 9 seems to be the order.
that's it.
Wow.
And
Thank you.
they are going to resolve a lot of issue for you also, especially for your
Yes, yes.
special.
So I also invite them to get in touch with our mail program, which Nabil, I will through you. I'll ask them to get in touch, and they can take this project, and we can be interested in this project as well.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much,
Shashank sir.
Shashank
Thank you,
Maruti.
and all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Maruti Suzuki has
Yeah,
always been kind, and they have been inviting all the startup founders who have joined this show, and they have been readily available to help them in whatever way that is possible.
absolutely.
So that's one advantage of startup Adda that we have been seeing over the last few episodes. Thank you so much once again, Shashank sir, for all your support.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. Thanks. All the best. All the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So this is the expert's view that we just heard on this CamCom. We'll now take the discussion for further with the founders and understand. Can you give us a sense for our viewers? How did you guys collaborate? How did the idea of this very startup came about? Was it your historically you were working? You all three come from a different walks of life. If you could give us a sense, how did it work? Different age group, different how do you get this energy at this point in time to start this kind of high tech startup? So I just want to hear that story.
Yeah, before Ajit starts out on this, we're pretty much almost the same age group. So Umesh
Okay,
is slightly
you are
older than the
setting
two of
this
us.
clarification, but you look younger. Mahesh, you look younger of the lot.
Blame the genes for it.
Okay, okay.
Ajit,
So
all yours.
hear the story. How did it start off?
Sure, Nabil. So I guess we started off much like any decent startup anywhere in the world, on the back of a napkin in a bar over Old Monk. So let me put it that way. I and Umesh were colleagues in Wipro. As a matter of fact, Umesh was my boss at Wipro. And, he had been a successful entrepreneur once. I had been a failed entrepreneur. And we felt that we could learn from each other and not make the same mistakes again when we turned entrepreneur. So we got together. We felt that it was important to address technology first rather than look at a use case. And if 63% of the products in this world are made from metal, plastic, and glass, now, and they all lend itself to visual inspections, and those visual inspections, as we know, are subjective. So then why not use computer vision to essentially address that? Because the extensibility of the platform becomes that much more infinitely possible. Mahesh is a serial entrepreneur, and I keep telling people, and we complement each other so very well. When there's a problem, typically Umesh will ask where is a screwdriver because he is a mechanical engineer by profession. I'm a sales guy, so I'll ask who do I essentially tap, and then Mahesh will say focus. We need to solve this. So in many ways we complement each other very very well that way. And that is how we started off. The last 4 years has been exceedingly good journey. Of course, the blips happened thanks to COVID, but then on the other hand, COVID has also been in many ways a accelerator for us because thanks to COVID, everybody wants solutions that eliminate subjectivity, brings in objectivity, brings in consistency, and of course, future-proofs the process. And I think in many ways we are that's particular solution which enables a particular process to ensure that it works without any kind of stoppage, even in a shouldn't case, God forbid, but shouldn't case something like COVID come again. That is the genesis of CamCom.
Great, Ajit. That's really inspiring, and it's great to see you. And most of you have actually this is not probably the first startup for all three of you. You had worked with another startup in your previous stint. Mahesh also had a startup. You also had one. Umesh also probably had one. So that's not the first experience. How is it different from your previous experiences? How confident are you on CamCom? And what is the basis of your confidence? And where do you see your business going? What are the drivers? What are the factors that you think that could lead you to establish this business? Or you hope you don't exit this one right now, Mahesh, because last time you exited one of your startups. So what is so different in this?
So the question is, having done startups, what you realize is what could have gone right, right? What did go wrong, and the learnings that can be applied to the next journey that you take, right? So the biggest learning from this is the fourth startup that I'm doing, right? The biggest journey from the past three startups has been the learnings. There have been some successes, there have been some failures, but you learn, you understand what is right, what is wrong. As far as Camcom goes, right, we are in the right market at absolutely the right point in time, right? Which is the biggest asset that a startup can have. So then what it does is it narrows down, the product market fit is there. It narrows down to how well we as a team can execute on the vision. And that is what is going to be the journey going forward. And taking this further, move away from being a very automotive focused vertical and making it more of a horizontal platform. For lack of a better term, let's call it computer vision as a service that applies to the quality field across multiple industries, right? The same thing can go into a building industry where you can assess health of a buildings. It can go into a garment industry to see how good the garment is when it comes out of the factory line. You can take it to an aerospace industry to do A checks and C checks on the aircraft. You can do it to a space or a defense agency to see how good the quality of the product that they have or the missiles or whatever it is. So the applicability of this technology cuts across all of these sectors, and that's what excites us the most at this point, because when we look, the market is wide open, very few players in this market, and we are one of the leaders at this point in time. So we just got to keep running really hard, keep improving, and stay ahead of the curve.
What kind of investment you have attracted right now? What kind of business are you doing right now? What is your turnover right now? What kind of business you have got, and what kind of potential you see for such a startup?
We are a $1 million ARR business at this point in time, right? We see this as in the next 2 to 3 years to be $100 million revenue business, going up to becoming a $500 million revenue business in the next 5 to 7 years. We have done a pre-series A round of around $1 million last year. We have a low burn. We are pretty much cash flow positive month on month at this point in time. So we are in a good space, but we will be raising more money for growth. We're just waiting on certain markets to open up with the COVID situation hopefully declining. And we're looking at Southeast Asia, Europe, US for expansion at this point in time.
What is your next 5 years down the line? What is your rightful place? What kind of revenue you expect to generate?
Post 5 years,
And
we expect to be.
is it going to be the insurance, your main customer, the OEMs, or the dealership, or the shop floor? Where is going to be your main target?
Good question, right? So we would transition from being a industry focused vertical to being a horizontal player, where it does not matter which industry it is coming from. We will be judged on the number of API calls or inspections that we do on the platform. Does not matter what the industry is, right? What we aim to be is the most real world relevant computer vision AI company, right? There are lots of AI companies which do lots of really interesting things, but are they real world relevant? So how can we bring relevance to the real world, and how can we also make it synonymous with quality? From the market is huge, right? The market is in 2 digit, 3 digit billions, right? The onus is on us to execute as a team and go capture a market share that makes sense.
So globally, do you have any example? Who are your, your role models or a company that is doing well? Can you share with us how is it placed on the global pedestal, and how do you think it will pan out in your market, like MENA market or India market? That is your focus.
So our focus is a global market, Nabil. We are not going to be India or MENA focused. We are based in India, building for the world. All right. There is going to be competition in different spheres, right? So if you consider the insurance sphere, there are competitors like Tractable, which is based out of the UK and the US. Tractable just recently became a unicorn. Uh, from end of line vehicle inspection perspective, there's an Israeli company called UVI, which also recently became a unicorn. So there are very recent models that we could look up to say what the business outcome could look like. But at the end of the day, we will be different in the sense that we will move into a more horizontal space rather than a vertical space. And right now, there are no players particularly in that market. There are people occupying certain segments of a niche market. We will become more of a horizontal player, which at some point would put us on a collision course with the likes of providers like Amazon and Microsoft, right, who doing the base cloud. So it will take us adjacent to them. We'll have to figure out how we work alongside. We do work alongside some of them even today. So we just have to figure out a process at that point.
Umesh, I just want to understand operationally how lucrative is it to be an Indian startup for the world? And what are the key aspects that one can take from being in a market like India, making a base in India, or somebody who is watching who wants to be part of this ecosystem? Which are the space, wider space you notice where somebody can come and join your hand or probably be a helping hand in helping you in terms of scale up the growth that you're probably potentially looking at?
Good question, Nabil. Actually, if you look at it, if it kind of divide our market into two, one is aftermarket and one is on the manufacturing side. There's a lot to do on the manufacturing side. Aftermarket is limited to the sense that you have mobile devices available, and there's hardly any control that we have as a company. We just put our solution out and people use it. Whereas when it comes to manufacturing setup, there's a whole lot that we are doing differently from the rest of the world. First of all, there's a capital investment, a capex required for putting up some of the equipment, some of the rigs that Ajith had talked about in his presentation, and these are internationally very expensive. Actually, we have brought the equipment costs down substantially, and we are talking about bringing down to almost 25-30% of the costs that you have internationally. Costs of cameras, cost of the compute that we use on the edge, everything is heavily optimized. So, it is very suitable for Indian manufacturers because the capex is very low. Gone are the days when you have anything to put on an assembly line and, somebody from Germany or somebody from Japan or South Korea is actually giving you a $500,000 invoice for a capex. And we are talking about sub $100,000. Of capex here, of sophisticated equipment that goes on top of their existing conveyors. And there's a lot of play there because there's a lot of integration work. We do a lot of integration work, which is not our forte, to be honest, right? I mean, we're doing SI, systems integrator work. So there are a lot of small companies which can play that role, where they can, integrate our equipment with the PLCs of the conveyors, with the backend SAP systems. There's a lot of scope, a lot of white space there. That other startups can come in and actually accelerate this whole process. And leaving us to our specialty, which is fundamentally, how do we assess damages and defects, right? I mean, that's our specialty. So there's a lot of space out there for startups to work on. But yes, from an India perspective, one thing that we have brought to our customers is, a very, very, very optimal capex when it comes to on-premise manufacturing setups. Now we can replicate this elsewhere in the world as well. I mean, although if you end up in Europe or US or other first world countries where the cost of fabrication is very high, but yet a lot of things that we have done from a design perspective, right, is really reusable anywhere. So those costs are completely taken out of the equation when we go international because we've already spent that money, we've already done that. All that is required is now to replicate, things there.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining ET Auto Startup Adda, a station for innovation. Wish you all the very best. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for watching ET Auto Startup Adda. This is a show that brings innovators and startup founders not only to assist them, but also it provides a platform where you can probably get in touch with the leading incubation that are there in India. You can also connect with the finances all happens at ET Auto Startup Adda Station for Innovation. Thank you so much. We'll be back next Tuesday with another set of founders. Thank you so much.